Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, still working on the horizontal boring mill, and I've been kind of working a bunch of stuff here off camera. I know you guys have seen a bunch of scraping lately and probably don't want to see a whole bunch more, but in the previous episode on this project, we had gotten the front way scraped in flat from one end to the other, and we had also tested it for alignment by putting a big square on here, running an indicator up and down it, and seeing if it was in alignment to the column. Now, off camera, and since my last time we were together on this project, I have pretty much done the same thing on this back way back here. Yeah, we've got it scraped in. I got my 8-foot straight edge back here, which we've been using that to test on, and we've got it scraped in. What I don't have a really good idea on right now is really how these ways are in relation to one another. So we know that they're relatively flat. They're not, I'm not at a finished scraping stage here yet because we've got some more work that's got to be done. So, but I do have, good contact from end to end, fairly good contact. A lot of people say it's probably good enough as it is, but we can do better. And same thing over here on the back. Now, what could be going on is a couple of things that we need to check for. Number one is, we check to see if this side was square to the head. I really haven't done that check on this back side yet. So while they're flat, one side could be up or down from one another. Another thing that could be going on that we need to check for is the flatness across this. And I haven't done that at all yet. And honestly, I'm going to be doing most of that later on once I get the table back from the grinders, because we're going to actually use that table as a big surface plate that we can put on here and blue up and check and really get a good idea, particularly to make sure that they're flat from end to end, but they could be tilted one way or the other, or who knows how in relationship to one another. By putting a plate across covering both sides, we can check for that flatness to get them all in a plane in that direction. Now, what I want to do today and in this video is first off show you where we are as far as the bluing and the contact. And I think what I'm going to do is we're going to take the saddle that we've already scraped into the surface plate, and I feel like it's in pretty good shape as it is. We're going to take that saddle and put it on here and actually check for squareness going across the ways this way. I still don't know if they're perfectly flat with one another, but from an alignment standpoint, one thing that I need to figure out is the back way higher or lower than the front way? And we can determine that pretty easily, I think, by putting the square on here on the saddle and running it up and down and getting an idea. So we're going to be doing that test coming up here real shortly. Let's show you where we are as far as the scraping goes, and then we'll get the saddle on here and try that out. All right, I've got everything blued up, and I blued up both sides so you can kind of see where we're at. And I'm just going to roll you down through here and just kind of let you look at both sides and see the contact that we got. And first off, this is not a finished scrape. And really what I was after here was getting the highs on the ends down where we're making contact from one end to the other and have, decent coverage from one side to the other. And I think we've accomplished that. Yeah, there's a couple of places in here that honestly need some more work, but we're going to be doing more scraping once we get that surface plate or that table that we're going to use as a surface plate back from the grinders, and because we're going to probably have to do some more scraping to straighten out that alignment. So I don't want to go too crazy here, and get it all perfect and then just have to go back and rework things after the fact. I'm just going to be making extra work for myself by doing that. But we do have flatness along the lengths of these two ways. The question is, in relationship to one another, how do they look? All right, let's get that saddle over here and start looking at some things. I've got the saddle here that goes on there. It is upside down right now, so I need to get this flipped over. So got the gantry here to do my heavy lifting for me, so we'll hook it into this strap. All right, we'll just flip this around. It goes in this direction. And let's carefully lower it down here. So I'm gonna lower this down on here and kind of let it come down, but it's gonna be sitting on the edge. I just got a paint stick, a little thin piece of wood. I just don't want this thing to be rolling over directly metal on metal there, so we don't damage those ways that I have spent all this time scraping on. So let me kind of get this front side more or less lined up. What I want it to do is when it comes down, I want it to be going in this direction. And we'll just lower it down. Move this strap out of the way. Okay. Roll on down. All right. Take these little blocks of wood out now. All right. So we got that on there, and it's just sitting up on here, guys. There is normally a lead screw that goes through this that will power it back and forth, or you can crank it to move it back and forth. I've just got it sitting on the ways right now. None of that stuff is hooked up. And the table for this machine sits on top of this and actually goes in that direction. So, but we have already scraped this end over on the surface plate where we know that the top is flat to the surface plate. We know that the ways on the bottom are parallel and coplanar to the top here. We've already got all that checked out. So what I'm gonna do is we're just gonna slide this kind of up towards the head, and I can use this surface, put a square on it, and measure squareness and see if we're out. So I think instead of using that big square that I used last time, I've got a granite square that I know is dead nuts perfect. It's a lot smoother, wider face on it. It's not quite as long, but I think I'm gonna put that up on this to kind of get an idea. And we'll sweep the indicator just like we did before and check it for squareness. I think I'm set up now to actually test the squareness of the bed to the column of the machine, which is really what's important. And let me just start off by saying when I first did this, I was getting some very weird numbers. Things were bouncing around, things weren't going like I planned. I spent some time over here really cleaning up these column ways, making sure that there was nothing on them. I took a stone and knocked off any high spots. And I think that a lot of my readings were on the back side where this clamp rides. There's a clamp in here that kind of clamps between the top and the bottom. But I think on it, there was some trash on the back, and that was giving me some problems. I got all that cleaned off really good, and again, stoned. Everything seems to be where it needs to be on that now. So I'm a lot better off there. The other thing I was having problems with is I was noticing that my first setup wasn't real rigid on the indicator itself. I just had a mag base up on the spindle, and I was not getting consistent readings. So I went to a much more rigid mount here. I actually got the indicator I got a rod bolted to the head. There's some tapped holes in here, and it's very rigid. It's extremely rigid. And another problem that I was noticing when I was playing around with it is I would go to the top and it would move a certain amount. Then I'd come back down and it would move that same amount again in the same direction. You know, you should go to the top. If you got any movement, you got movement, but then to double check, you go back to the bottom and you should be zero. And if you're zero, that's kind of a self-check. And what I was thinking is happening, or was happening, was this square was actually sliding backwards on the ways, probably from the vibration of the machine. It wasn't by much, but it was enough to make my readings go off. So I clamped a piece of metal back here. It can't move backwards now. It was wanting to move towards me. So I think I got all that worked out. So let's zoom in here, take a look at the indicator, see where we're at. The other thing I want to do is after I run this test, we're running off of the saddle right now. The saddle was scraped in over on the surface plate. It's already been done. And while I measured on the plate to make sure that my heights from the top to the bottom on all the ways was roughly the same, within a couple of 10 thousandths of an inch, there's still the possibility that, this may not be perfect, and that could be causing some squareness things here. So I'm going to put a parallel just across the ways that I know is true. We'll put the square on that and see if there's any difference, because I'm really just trying to isolate how straight across those ways are right now. So anyway, enough talking. Let's take the indicator for a ride, see what kind of reading we get. All right, let's let rider up. Make sure that needle didn't bounce. Yeah, it moved about 1 thou there. We'll just kind of keep that in mind and compensate for it. But we're going to let it go up, and you can see the needle is moving. And on this indicator, if the needle is moving in that direction, that means that the square is leaning in that direction also. And you can see it kind of moving a little bit as we go up. This granite square is 18 inches from top to bottom. And we're going to sweep about 15 inches of that, which is close to the distance between the two ways. So you should be able to get more or less a direct reading here from one side to the other, and that should tell us how much higher one way is than the other relative to the head. So let's let it go all the way up there to the top or close to it. And we're just going to stop right there. Turn that machine off. And it's about 4 thou is what it's reading from top to bottom. And again, it moved about 1 thou when I just started going up, just from the drag in the indicator. So I'm just going to say 3 thou, and it's leaning in this direction. So to straighten that out, this front way needs to go down about 3 thousandths of an inch to straighten that out. Again, the distance between my ways is roughly the same distance that we swept here, so it should be a 1-to-1 reading or close to it. So again, now what I want to do is I want to put a parallel on the ways itself, take the cross slide out, or the saddle out of the equation, and look at it that way and see if there's any differences in that reading. So I changed my setup. I've got this parallel that's going across here. And this parallel is a ground parallel from one side to the other. It's a very accurate tool. I've actually checked it out on my surface plate, and it's extremely accurate. So laying across the ways, we're basically just creating a parallel surface that goes from this side to this side. And we can now sweep it in this direction and see what the ways read as compared to the saddle. Hopefully it's going to be roughly the same number, not a big difference. If there's a big difference, that means we've got a problem in the saddle, and we don't want to have to deal with that. So what we're going to do is, I got that zeroed out. I'll zoom you in here. We'll ride it to the top, and then we'll ride it back down to the bottom and make sure it zeroes back out and see what it reads. Let me zoom you in here so you can see that a little bit closer. All right, that indicator looks zeroed out. Fire up the machine. We're heading in the up direction. Start it and let it ride. Let me look at that zero. It moved just a little bit, but not much. Let's see what it does. We'll stop it right there. Take a close look at it. It's right on 3, which is kind of what we had before. We're going to let it go back down now. We're going to go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to stop it right there. I'm going to change directions, and I'm going to let it feed back up until it just starts going. That way, if there was any drag in that indicator, it should take it back out. And yeah, we're right on about at 1 thou, and that's about what it moved when I started up a while ago. So, 2, maybe 3 thousandths leaning in, which is very similar to the measurement we got off of the saddle. So that's telling me that the saddle is scraped in pretty good. As long as I'm checking, I also want to check the direction of this way up and down. So I've done this test before with the big square, and that was before I had kind of worked on the head a little bit. And I know my head's a lot tighter now, and it's giving me much better measurements after I got it tuned up a little bit. And I've also done some more scraping to this way since then and dropped the back end down a little bit. So I want to see where we're at on this again now and check it. So, before we were checking plainness in this direction, now we're checking it in this direction. And what I want to do is we'll just sweep up and down just like we did before and see what it looks like. So let's fire the machine up, and once again we'll take her for a ride. All right, let's let her ride up. All right, so we go to the top, and we're about 1 thou in. Thou going back that way, which means actually the front end is up a little bit high now. I may have taken just a little bit off the back side, but it's a lot better than it was. Let's take it back down, make sure it checks out. Back to 0, so I think that's good. Only 1 thou out in that direction now, so probably a little more scraping. We've got a little bit more, so we got to bring this end down from the other side anyway, so that should be able to straighten that out with a little bit more scraping. All right, I'm going to check the back way because, just because this one's in this direction, I don't know if the back one is in the same. It could be up or down from the front. All I've done is scraped it for flatness, so let's see how it looks for squareness. All right, I got you set up on the back side of the mill now, and because the indicator has to point in that direction. The way I got it set up, I can't have it pointing toward the front, but I think you can see what's going on. So I want to check this way too. Remember that the back way is independent of the front way as far as squareness goes. At least it is right now. We will tie them together later when we start scraping with the table that goes across both ways. But for right now, I just want to see if it's in a square or not. I have not looked at this one. This is the first peek at it. So let's take that indicator up for a ride. See, we're going up. And let her roll up. I'm going to stay on this side. I'm going to have to go around and look at it once I get up to the top, because I can't even see the indicator right now. All right, I'm going to come around there and see how bad it is. I haven't seen it. You have. So where are we at? Wow, okay. Thou. That's actually better than I was thinking it was going to be. And it is leaning forward, so that means that, let's see, that means it needs to come back. So again, the front side here needs to come down a little bit by about 1 thou. It's pretty similar to what the other side is. That is good news. That's actually very good news. Let's ride it back down and make sure it checks out. Make sure nothing moved. Ride back down. Yeah, it looks like about a half a thou. So we're within a thou in that direction, though. That's good. One more check I want to do. I think what I want to do is actually put this on the saddle and run it up and down and just see what it looks like there. Should check out all right, but just need to double check it. So let's take a look at this setup. This one is probably a little bit more realistic in what we're looking at as far as the squareness down the length of the machine. We've got the saddle sitting on both ways at the same time. We've got the saddle that's been scraped in and should be good, but could have a little bit of error in it. We've got the parallel up here on top, which should be accurate. I think this is going to be, I don't think we got any error here. Got the square. So we're going to look at everything kind of combined. And the potential is here is that you got combined things that could be going on to get this out of square. But we want to check it. This is the real world. This is what we're at least where we're at right now. We still have opportunities to fix some things if needed. So let's zoom you in there, take you for a ride, see how she looks like this. All right, let's take her up. All right, we're going to stop it right there. I'm going to stick my head in front of the camera to read it. It's about 2 thou. We're going to come back down and we'll see if it zeroes out. We may need to sweep it again because it looked like it jumped about a half a thou right there at the beginning. We'll see where we end up at. I'm going to let it ease up just a little bit to take any play out of that. Yeah, we're at about a thou, so thou and a half. Which pretty much matches what we saw on the ways. So that tells me the saddle, again, is not introducing a whole lot of error into this. And again, looks like this side over here needs to drop down just a little bit in the grand scheme of things. So some more scraping to be done. I'm going to probably wait until I get my table back and can really do it. Some scraping across the ways, and we can kind of work that into our plan of attack when we do some more scraping later on. Well, there we go. Some more inspecting work on this machine as we continue to scrape it in and get it fine-tuned. I'm real happy where I'm at right now. And like I've kind of already mentioned a time or two, my game plan next is I'm waiting to get the table back. The table that mounts on this cross slide up here. It is going to be wide enough that it will go across both of them, and it's going to be long enough that it'll cover about a third of the bed. So I can use that. Once it's ground, I'll actually grind. When it comes back from grinding, I'll scrape it into my straight edge, make sure that it's a good reference surface. We're going to use it like a surface plate. We'll flip it upside down. We use the gantry crane to handle it. We'll set it down on there. We'll blue it up. We'll print it. And that's going to give me a real good indication of how we've looked at the ways, going out this way. We've looked at the ways, or at least kind of like this from side to side. But what we haven't looked at are the ways tilted, something like that in this plane. Well, when we can put that plate across both of them, we can fine tune that. And I imagine there's going to be some fine tuning to get it to scrape in and get some good prints. So we'll get it printed, across that. We'll get it printed from length to length again, make sure everything's good. And we'll come back in here and we'll recheck the alignment. And what I have learned from all of this is 2 things. Number 1 is that this front way needs to drop down a little bit. And also that on both sides, the end closest to the machine needs to drop down a little bit. So when we come in here and start scraping, we'll take that into consideration and do some more step scraping. I may, off camera, before we even get the plate back, is go ahead and try to scrape from one end to the other on this front way because it needs to lower down. I can't remember. I think it was 3 thousandths. I'll double check it and make sure before we go, before I start moving any metal. And I can come back and set this back up and check it again to see where we're at. So anyway, we're making progress. I'm gonna be doing some more scraping kind of in the evenings. And when I got an hour here or an hour there, I can come out here and do some scraping and get it knocked out. And we're waiting to get the table back from Kinetic. They've already started on it, but they've ran into an issue. They had to actually take the table off the grinder, and they're gonna have to reset it back up to finish it out. Not a big deal. They had another rush job come in. I told them my job is not a rush job, so they're kind of working it in as they can go. But they should have that back to me pretty soon, and hopefully we'll have this machine really tuned in. So guys, with that, that's gonna be a wrap on this one. And I'll bring you back from time to time on this project as there's something interesting to see. Hopefully you guys are enjoying looking at how we, validate and do our alignment. It's one thing to scrape a surface flat. I'm not gonna say anybody can do it, but if you've gone to a scraping class or done some basic scraping, you can get something flat. The challenge is when you gotta get things in alignment, and you really gotta start thinking, there's 3 planes that we're working on that we have to all make sure are in proper alignment. And it takes some thinking and about how you can measure that, how you can check that, and if it's out, how do you fix that? And I'm by no means an expert. I'm still learning as I go. I'm leaning on some of my mentors to help me through this process, but this has been a really good learning process for me, and hopefully you're learning a little bit along the way as well. Guys, with that, as always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Thumbs up are greatly appreciated. Hit that bell icon to get notifications when new videos are posted. And as always, a big thank you to all my supporters out there. Guys that support me on Patreon, PayPal, or just send things in the shop, whatever. It really makes a difference and lets us be able to get things done. I'm getting this machined, reground, and it's the funding that comes in from you guys that lets me be able to afford to do that. And yeah, it helps me out, but it also hopefully helps you out too, because you get to learn along the way. So with that, guys, I'm going to sign off, and we'll catch you on the next video. Again, thanks for watching.